Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how you can set up your very own aquarium on a budget for super low cost. So we're going to be talking about pretty much everything you're going to need. So that's tank, lighting, filter, fish, plants, everything like that you need to get an aquarium up and running. Now, I'm not going to be giving you like specific products to buy. I'm just going to be talking about how I like to set up my aquariums and try and keep the cost as low as possible. So before we get into today's video, I just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody. Obviously, it's Christmas Day here in Australia, and I'm sure it's Christmas Day in a few other countries, but in America and all those other countries where it's Christmas tomorrow, Merry Christmas for tomorrow as well. So yeah, I thought I'd keep it nice and festive. I've got the little Santa Claus hat on. But yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video. Okay, so we're going to be doing today's video a little bit differently. We're going to be having a bunch more different camera angles. I thought I'd just switch it up for Christmas, you know, a little bit of a present for everyone. Now, these 4 tanks right here are obviously the 4 that you see in the backdrop of my video. I will just quickly go over them, just show you what I've got in them. So we've got this tank right here. It's got a little bit of algae. It's just a plain tank, got some cherry shrimp and endlers. This tank's got a few goldeneye cichlid. There's a tiny pair in here that I'm growing out, so there's male. Female is somewhere there. Then we got a bunch of zebradenios in there, and you can actually buy the zebradenios on my website. Over here, we've just got this poor lonesome male goldeneye. He's just chilling in here. The female, he actually killed, so yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna get him another one. We've also got just a few long-finned leopard denios in here. In here, this tank's a little bit overstocked right now. We have the cherry barbs in here while I'm conditioning them for another video. Then we have these 2 apistos, and we've got just a few Pacific blue eyes. I think there's a trio in here. They're wild caught, so I just wanted to raise them up a little bit. They were absolutely tiny when I first got them. I don't know where they've gone. So these style of aquariums is sort of what we're going to be talking about today. These are the most low cost little aquarium setups you could possibly get. And I'd say these things you could set up for about 60 to 100 bucks, if not less. But yeah, I guess without any further ado, I'll stop rambling on now and we'll jump into how you can set up an aquarium on a budget. All right, so I'm sorry about this mic as well. It's a little bit chunky. It's kind of annoying, but it films pretty good audio. So as for the first component of setting up your aquarium, it's obviously just gonna be your aquarium. These fish tanks right here, I get from Kmart here in Australia. They're about 39 bucks. You can also pick them up secondhand off like Marketplace or Gumtree. People usually sell these for about 10 to 20 bucks. Now, if you're not in Australia, I mean, I'm sure you could find an alternative like this for a similar price. They're super cheap tanks to make as well if you know how to make a tank. But yeah, like I was saying, these are about 39 bucks here in Australia, and they actually come with some gravel, they come with the tank, they come with fake plants, they come with a filter, a net. So they already come with quite a bit of stuff. Now, usually I just throw out the gravel and the fake plant. They look pretty hideous in my opinion. But the net, the tank, and the filter can be pretty useful. I don't use the filter, but I do keep them just in case I ever want to. I have used them before and they're a pretty good filter. They're just like a little sort of power head / sponge filter thing. But they are definitely a great filtration for your aquarium. It's just I prefer to use different filtration, but we'll get onto the filtration later. Now, something I would steer clear from personally if I was a beginner is those like fish tank kits. So not ones like this where everything's loose, but ones where they've got that lid, and in that lid they've got the filter, they've got a light, they've got a heater. Those can be a little bit tedious, particularly when you're trying to clean it, just because some of the time all those components don't actually come out separately, and because of that it can be super hard to clean, and if one of them breaks or malfunctions, you just have to get rid of the whole tank. You can't like fix it. Now, I don't want to totally bag out those kits. They can be all right if you get a quality one. I do like the simplicity of it. It's just, yeah, if I was a beginner, I would try and steer clear from those. They're usually more expensive anyway, and they do sort of market to be an easy alternative for your first aquarium. But in my opinion, an aquarium like this is so much easier. I literally do no maintenance on this, and it's easy to clean. I don't have all those little compartments and contraptions stuck in my lid that I can't get out. So yeah, just a standard glass aquarium like this is definitely the best if you are setting up an aquarium on a budget. Like I said, there's so many different types you can get. You can get new ones like this for 39 bucks, which is pretty cheap. But yeah, you can get them off Marketplace, Gumtree, anything like that. But yeah, as for the first way you can keep your aquarium budget minimal is by getting a super cheap aquarium without the knickknacks, without all the gadgets in it, just like this. All right, so we're gonna go back to this angle for our next component, and that's gonna be a pretty essential one, and that's your filtration. Now you can see in all of my aquariums here, I use sponge filters. I've got a little under gravel filter in there, and I've got another sponge filter in here. So I really do try and use the most simple, cheapest, cost-effective filters possible. And the reason you can use such cheap and simple filters like sponge filters is, number one, they are very effective. But number two, if you have plenty of plants in your aquarium to take care of all the nitrates and nitrites, and you've got a nice thick layer of substrate which can actually cultivate all that beneficial bacteria, then it does actually take a lot of stress off your filter, which means you don't need a very powerful filter in a tank setup like this. Now, filters are definitely beneficial, particularly sponge filters, because they help strip all that dirt and detritus out of the water column, and they also do promote growth of your beneficial bacteria as well. The only problem with sponge filters, in my opinion, is it's only really worth it if you've got, you know, a few aquariums. And the reason for that is because you can then get yourselves one of these. Now, this right here is a little aerator. I'm sorry about the lighting, it's super dark up there. And what I do is I connect all of these sponge filters with a little bit of aquarium tubing up into the aerator. I've got a few hoses, what do you call those, taps up there, which you can adjust the flow. Now, obviously you can get aerators that just have one outlet for one filter, which can be very effective as well. But at that point, I'd probably just try and use like the Kmart filter or a cheap powerhead filter. Although, like I said, if you do want to get the little aerator, oxygenator, whatever you want to call that, then the sponge filter is your best bet. You can pick one of these up for about, I don't even know, $5 at your local fish shop. You can get them for even cheaper online. And you can get one of these. I get this off eBay for, I think, about $30. So altogether, that's about $35 to $40. And I mean, that's pretty much the cost of a good filter anyway. But yeah, like I said, I also do use the Kmart filters as well. So I actually don't use any of the Kmart filters in this row of tanks, but I do use them in other tanks just because they're very simple and I mean, they're free when you buy one of these tanks. So yeah, what I would try to steer clear from for beginners is those little hang-on back filters. Now, I don't want to bag out any filters here as well, just because I don't want people to see this with those particular filters and think that they need to get a new one. It's just if I was setting up an aquarium, I'd try and steer clear from those just because they can clog easily. Now, if you don't know what a hang-on back filter is, it basically hangs on the back of your aquarium. It's got this little intake that sits down. It sucks up the water and it sort of flows over back into your aquarium. So those sorts of filters can be great at promoting growth for beneficial bacteria, but they're not as great when it comes to stripping the water of dirt and detritus. So yeah, in my opinion, if you want to keep the cost low, I would just recommend getting either a cheap powerhead filter or a nice old trusty sponge filter like these. Okay, so as for our next component when it comes to setting up your aquarium, it's obviously going to be your lighting. Now, I've got this little eBay light up here. I think it cost me about 30, 40 bucks, and you can see it's absolutely massive. It covers these 4 tanks perfectly fine. It grows these plants extremely well. And yeah, it's like one of the cheapest sort of lighting options you can use. Alternatively, let me pick you guys up and take you over here. You could use one of these. Now, this right here is a little Bunnings light. It's not on at the moment, as you can tell. Now, this light I do find is great. It's a great alternative to the eBay light if you can't find one big enough or small enough for your aquarium. But I do find that these lights are a little bit too strong. So you can see in this aquarium, I don't have too many plants at the moment. I've got this poor little angelfish. It's a little bit too strong. I find the only plants it can really grow is duckweed. It just burns the rest. You can see I've got little bits of frog bit in there that are just struggling. So yeah, this is another alternative. They're about 20 bucks from Bunnings. You could probably also get floodlights from like any other hardware store if you're not in Australia. But yeah, like I was saying, I do think that these eBay lights right here are the best lighting option. Here's a closer look at the plants. Obviously I showed you them before, but it grows all these ones out the top here. So we've got these massive philodendron xanadus that are just humongous. And yeah, the best part about these lights is that they're so cheap. So like I said, they're about 20, 30 bucks. You can get them all sizes. I think this is probably a 60 centimeter, this would be a 90 centimeter one. You can get 60 centimeter ones, 30 centimeter ones, 10 centimeter ones, whatever size you need. And another thing I like about these, which I don't like about the Bunnings lights, so you can see these lights are super streamlined. They are like aquarium lights, so they do look good over your aquarium, whereas the Bunnings lights can look a little bit ugly, if I'm being honest, particularly because you've got to hide the cord. This cord just nicely hides back there. And I mean, as you can see, you can pretty much not see like the light at all. I mean, you can see like the rays of light, but you can't really see the actual light itself. So yeah, it's a great little simple, seamless design, and it's definitely what you need if you're a beginner. Now, lighting is probably one of the most expensive things besides the actual tank when it comes to fish keeping. I think a lot of brands like to make these super elaborate lights with all these little apps on your phone. You can control the intensities, the spectrums. But when it comes to fish keeping, particularly simple fish keeping like this, you want to have the just most simple light you possibly can. You don't need any apps or any dials to control certain things. All you need is a reliable light like this, which can grow good plants and can make your fish's color pop beautifully. I mean, you can see this golden eye cichlid right here. He's got some awesome colors, all thanks to this light. And I do think this is one of the reasons a lot less people actually keep fish, just because aquarium stores and aquarium product brands try and make as much money as they can, obviously, by selling these super expensive pieces of equipment. And if you're a beginner, that's obviously gonna scare you away. When in reality, like I've been saying this whole time, all you need is just a simple, cheap light, simple, cheap filter, simple, cheap aquarium. You don't need any of that expensive stuff. So yeah, with that being said, if you're wanting to set up an aquarium on a budget, I'd recommend getting either an eBay light or a Bunnings floodlight, and just trying to steer clear from any of those super expensive lighting options. All right, so we're back in this awkward angle again, talking about our next component to your aquarium. So this doesn't apply for everyone, although if you are in a colder area and you want to keep tropical fish like this, I would recommend getting a heater. Now, heaters are another thing that can be super expensive. Not only can they just cost a lot because of the power usage, they use a lot of power, but they're just an expensive piece of equipment in general. Now, I actually don't use any heaters in my aquariums. I do have heated aquariums if, you know, any of these fish get white spot or they start to get a little bit sick. I'll throw them in the heated aquarium. But during the summer months here in Australia, it does stay pretty warm and all of these fish here can go unheated. And something great about actually keeping your fish unheated, I don't want to talk about this too much because I'm going to save it for a whole nother video, but your fish actually do live longer in unheated conditions, given that they're not getting diseases all the time from being too cold. But yeah, like I said, that's got nothing to do with today's video. I will go into that on another video. So as for heaters, I would recommend you can get super simple, inexpensive heaters from Kmart as well. They sell a heater. So I've gotten those heaters twice. One of the times it wasn't working. Second time it's worked fine and I've got it still up on the top of my rack. I've also got friends like Nat from Brisbane Guppy Keeper who keeps the Kmart filters in all his aquariums, and he says they work pretty well. And they're about 19, maybe 25 bucks, I think. They're super cheap heating option. Now, another thing you can use that's a lot cheaper than actually using a heater in your aquarium is using a heating pad. So reptile heating pads are probably the cheapest. You can get cheap reptile heating pads for around 30 to 50 bucks, and those will slide under your aquarium and they'll sort of just heat your aquarium from the bottom up. Now, I've done this once and it worked super well. It was by far one of the most effective ways of heating my aquarium. The only problem is most heaters have an inbuilt thermostat. So once the actual water temperature gets to the desired temperature, say 26 degrees Celsius, it'll shut off. And then as soon as the temperature drops, it'll turn back on again and heat the water back up. But with the heat pad, it doesn't have that. So it just sort of heats your aquarium up. So you want to get a pretty low voltage heat pad that's not gonna boil your fish. But yeah, like I said, heating's not essential, particularly if you live in a warmer part of the world, although if it snows where you live or it gets below, you know, 20, 18 degrees Celsius in your water, then I would recommend getting a heater. So yeah, in order to keep your aquarium on a budget, try and go for the cheapest heating option, or just try and not use a heater at all. You can also put your aquarium in a warm spot in your house, say in front of a window that gets morning sun, and that should heat your aquarium up pretty well as well. You can also put it on top of like your fridge, and the heat from the fridge will heat up your aquarium. Using low-cost heaters is obviously another great way to keep your aquarium set up on a budget. All right, so now that we've talked about all the ways you can actually keep your, I guess, hardware set up on a budget with your aquarium, your lighting, your filter, your heater, we're now gonna talk about more of the fun stuff, and that's the stuff that goes inside. So first things first, we're gonna be talking about how you can keep your substrate under budget. Now, there's a few ways you can do this. Obviously, this is just aquarium substrate, so it's a little bit more expensive than some of these other options, which I'm about to tell you. Now, option number one, this is probably my favorite. I used to do this all the time when I, was young and didn't have any money. And that was going down to the creek and just using some sand or gravel from your local river, local creek, washing it out, leaving it in a bucket of water for a few days, and then you can put it in your aquarium. Now, not only does this give you a nice natural look, but it also does house a bunch of beneficial bacteria already. and it does have a bunch of microorganisms which your aquarium fish can actually eat. Now, the only downside to this is sometimes it can carry parasites or diseases. I haven't had any trouble with this before, but I would imagine it does have the ability to carry those sorts of things into your aquarium and affect all your fish. But yeah, as long as you're getting it from a relatively clean sort of river system, not in like a little gutter on the side of the road, then you shouldn't have any trouble with it. Now, another way you can get substrate for really cheap is going to a hardware store and getting play sand or river sand. Now, this stuff is about 5 to 10 bucks a bag, and you get an absolutely huge, like 20 kilo bag. And that's definitely enough to fill up the bottom of your aquarium. You don't actually need that much substrate in your aquarium. That should be plenty to cover up the bottom of your aquarium. As for some of the things I wouldn't recommend for beginners, number one, don't get that rainbow gravel. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't care what you think about it. It just looks absolutely terrible in my opinion. And it's not great for your fish. It can stress them out just because they're not used to that sort of stuff. And usually that gravel is super low cost. It's made for like barely anything. And because of that, it's not actually great at, promoting the growth of beneficial bacteria and all sorts of stuff like that. It's also really bad if you want to grow aquarium plants. Now, if I'm being honest, gravel isn't usually expensive anyway. You can get a bag like this for about 15 bucks, except it is a bit of a smaller bag, maybe 5 to 10 kilos. So if you are wanting to keep your aquarium under budget, then I would just recommend going down to your creek or going to a hardware store and getting a nice cheap aquarium substrate alternative. So as for the next component, we get to move nice and close to the aquariums. This is one of my favorite parts of setting up an aquarium, and that's your plants. Now, if you are a beginner, aquarium plants are definitely a cheat code to setting up your aquarium. Not only do they just look absolutely awesome, but they're so essential when it comes to keeping your water quality good and clean for your aquarium fish. So like I mentioned earlier, the plants suck out all the nitrates, nitrites. They also help take out any of the excess nutrients in your aquarium, which can prevent any algae blooms or algae overgrowth in your aquarium. So yeah, they are literally just a cheat code, particularly if you have a nice big bunch of plants like I've got in this aquarium. So pretty much all the plants you see here is what I'd recommend for you if you are a beginner. Number one, we've got guppy grass here. Now this actually came from one strand, which I got in a fish bag so long ago. And now it's turned into all this. I've got a little bit in here. I've got heaps up there. I've got so much throughout the fish room now. So yeah, guppy grass is one thing I would recommend. It's pretty cheap. You can probably get a bunch of this for about 5 bucks. Moving on to the next thing, we've actually got a moss, and this is Saswastatang or Subswastatang. I'm pretty sure it's Subswastatang. I've talked about this before as well. Now, this stuff is so easy to grow. I used to think it was really hard to grow, but I mean, as you can see, it's absolutely everywhere. So it's all over the ground in here. I've got this massive big bunch of it right here. So my friend actually gave me this ages ago, King's Aquascapes, shout out to him, he's a great guy. And I'm not gonna lie, I neglected it a little bit. I left it down here in this old tank and it did die off. I had about, probably this much left, and I threw it in this aquarium. It took over, got a little bit out, threw it in this aquarium, and it's starting to take over there as well. So Subswastatang is another one I would recommend. The next one is right here. This is only a little bit. I've got some floating as well, and that's Vallisneria. Now, I got this from one little piece just like this. I grow it outside and I get these little pups like this. I throw them in my aquarium. Once they get big enough, I plant them down here. And yeah, they're another great little beginner aquarium plant. They're very cheap as well, very fast growing. And they just look absolutely awesome. They look like a little freshwater seaweed. So yeah, Vallisneria is another one I'd recommend. As for the next one, we've got it back here just chilling, and that's a little bit of Anubias. So I've got Anubias in all my tanks as well. King's Aquascapes actually gave me this as well. And I got this from this one little Anubias right here. I think this is Anubias Nana or Nana Petite, I'm not too sure, but yeah, I've been propagating it from this, and from this little piece right here, I've gotten this one. I've gotten a few in here. I've got one just floating up there which fell off a rock. This is another one that a lot of fish shops will recommend to you if you are a beginner, just because it's literally impossible to kill. Now, I will just quickly mention as well, you can obviously get all these plants from fish shops. Plants are usually pretty cheap. You can get, like I said, this for about 5 bucks. You can probably get some Subswastatang for about 10 bucks. Val for about 7 bucks a bunch. You can get Anubias for about 10 bucks. It's all pretty cheap. But you can also go on like Marketplace, or you could go on fish buy and sell Facebook groups, and a lot of the time people sell buckets of this stuff for like 5 bucks. They just try and get rid of it. So you can definitely pick that up if you're a beginner, and that'll really help keep your aquarium setup in budget. But yeah, as for the final plant I'd recommend, it's this one right up here. Now this is foxtail, sometimes confused with hornwort. This stuff is one of the greatest floating plants. As you can see, it's just floating up here and it grows like nothing else. It's absolutely covered the top of this aquarium. I've got this stuff scattered around my fish room as well. It's just so beneficial. And it's another one I definitely recommend. Now, I actually find this pretty hard to find. I have seen it, I've never really seen it in fish shops for sale, maybe once or twice, but besides that, it's actually pretty hard to find. So I'm working on growing a bunch of this and I'm gonna put it up on my website for pretty cheap for all beginners to get. But yeah, with that being said, if you're wanting to set up your aquarium on a budget, either go down to your local creek and find some aquarium plants, or just go on Facebook Marketplace and get them for super cheap. And you should be able to keep your little aquarium build on a nice low cost budget. All right, and then moving on to the final component when it comes to setting up your aquarium, that's obviously gonna be your fish. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of today's video, I always try and make it so that in my setups, the fish are the most expensive thing. Now, a lot of the time, I mean, that doesn't really happen, but I try and keep it that way. And in all these setups, it's probably true. So as for some low cost beginner fish, I would recommend, number one is these guys. Now, these are zebra denios. I've got heaps of them. They breed like rabbits. They're so easy to breed and yeah, they're very cheap. I've got these up for about $3 on my website if you want to get a few. I'd also recommend these guys. Now, these are denios as well, but they're probably a little bit cooler looking in my opinion. They look like little dragons almost. These are long-finned leopard denios, so I haven't actually bred these guys in a while. I'm planning on making a breeding video on them soon. As for some others I'd recommend, things like endlers. Now, I've got heaps in here. They'll all come to the front if I do this. Now, these are just assorted endlers. These guys are also available on my website. You can snatch up a pair of these for, I think they're up for $8 a pair. So they're another great beginner fish, low cost beginner fish, I mean. And also in this tank, we got some cherry shrimp. Of course, they're not gonna be out now when I wanna film them, but they're another great one. You can pick them up for about $3 each. But yeah, they're another great one. Another good one, which I think a lot of people skip past, is these guys. Now, these are cherry barbs. So cherry barbs are about $4 to $5 each. I've got some of these guys growing up to be on my website soon. Now, cherry barbs are one of the most beautiful little aquarium fish in my opinion. You can see the male on the left there, female on the right. The males get that super deep red coloration and the females stay this like almost light orangey cream with brown and blonde stripes, I guess. And these guys are another one, super simple to care for, great in a 20-liter aquarium like this. They do get a little bit big, so if you want to keep a big school, you will need a little bit of a larger size aquarium, but they're another pretty cheap one. Another cheap one I keep in all my aquariums here, I keep little deformed bristlenose. Now, you can see this one's got a little bent fin there. I've got this one with a bent fin here. I usually pick these up from people on Marketplace or Gumtree who just want to get rid of them. I don't sell them just because I don't really feel comfortable selling a deformed fish, I guess. But it's not like they're deformed to the point where they don't have a good life. I mean, he's just got a little bit of a bent fin, so it's just more for aesthetics, I guess. But in saying that, I do have these guys available, just normal ones without deformities, available on my website as well. They're another very cheap one. And yeah, they're just another great beginner aquarium fish that you don't have to break the budget getting. And then as for some other fish, which you can get, obviously guppies, I've got so many of those on my website. Now, I sort of specialize in rare guppy strains, so none of my guppies are really too cheap. I do have 24 karat gold guppies, which are, I guess, a beginner rare guppy strain. For $25 a pair, they're homebred. They're an absolutely beautiful guppy strain. And yeah, they're another great little beginner aquarium fish. Now, as for some fish I wouldn't recommend if you're trying to keep the budget low is fish like this goldeneye, apistogrammas, any sort of dwarf cichlids. They can be a little bit more expensive. Obviously, it does depend what your budget is, but if you're trying to set it up for as low as possible, the ideal aquarium, in my opinion, would be this one right here. A few endlers and a few cherry shrimp would be the best stocking options in my opinion. Like I said, if you are trying to keep a nice low cost budget. So yeah, with that being said, if you're wanting to set up an aquarium for low cost, I wouldn't recommend going with any of those fancy fish. You can sort of work up to those. But these few fish that I've shown you here are great options if you want to set up a little aquarium just like this. Small size, nice and easy to take care of, and doesn't break the budget. Alright, so that is actually going to bring us to the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed and I hope this video helps a lot of you guys out. If you do want any extra help in setting up your own little aquarium, make sure to leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to reply back to you and give you as much advice as I possibly can. So yeah, if you did enjoy today's video, please make sure to go down and subscribe. While you're down there, smash the like button and comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going down there and reading them all, and I try to reply back to as many comments as I can. Also, if you haven't done so already, make sure to go check out my website, aussiefishkeeping.com. I've got a lot of these fish right here available. I've also got a bunch of rare guppy strains like I mentioned. And we are going to be having a super awesome Boxing Day sale on Boxing Day. So yeah, if you do want to set up your own aquarium and you are interested in any of these fish or any of the guppies, then I would highly recommend checking out the website on Boxing Day. We're going to have deals on the fish, deals on the botanicals, deals on the aquarium products. And I might even throw in a little discount on the shipping as well. But yeah, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for sticking around to the end. I'll see you all in that next video, and Merry Christmas.